Many who speak believe they're delivering a presentation, when in reality, they're only delivering information. See, on today's show, we're confronting a hard truth. If you're not measuring the success of your presentation, you're guessing. And guessing is not a strategy. We've got a guest here who's built an entire methodology distinguishing the five critical differences between ordinary presenting and a presentation designed to persuade, influence, and drive outcomes. You ready? Let's go. Today's guest, Patti Schutte, is the founder of Be Brilliant Presentation Group and the creator of the Resultations Method, which has a trademark pending. 2,000 plus clients coached, boosting confidence, engagements, and conversations. And she's a certified speaker and cognitive coach, helping leaders speak to win. I'm going to let her take it from here because she'll do a much better job than I will. So, welcome to the show, Patti. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you, Rob. I am excited to be here. And I have to tell you a fun story. Before I came up with the resultations method, I was thinking through different things, because if we have a method, we got to put a name on it. Because if we put
Right.
a name on it, it sticks in people's minds and memory more. And I was huge on the show a while back, The Dog Whisperer. I don't know if you ever saw that show, but he would come in and they would have these troubled dogs. And the next thing you know, he would walk and the dogs would be amazing and they would get so much better results. And I thought, ooh, presentation whisperer would be so cool. And then I realized, nope, it's taken. And now I've met you. So I thought, wow, this was meant to be. So thank you for being or for inviting me. And, I think one of the fun ways to kind of tell people about who I am in my journey is I often get asked, Patty, what's a presentation strategist? I've never heard of that. I don't tell myself that I'm a speech coach. That's certainly a component of what I do. But overarchingly, it's about using presentation as a business strategy, whether you're a solopreneur, a small business owner, or large and small enterprise. And people often say, well, how the heck do you become a presentation strategist? And so, Rob, I love to tell people the number one thing that you do is get a mathematics degree.
Really? Well, explain.
So that's actually what I have is I went to school because I'm great at math. I'm a very analytical mind and I didn't know what else to do. I'm in my young 20s and mom's like, you got to do something, girl. So I'm like, well, I'm good at math. So I'm going to get a math degree. And then what am I going to do with this math degree? And colleagues of mine or classmates of mine that were I considered more brilliant than myself took the actuarial test and said it was miserable. And I thought, well, then I can't do that. So I'm like, I guess I'll be a teacher. So I did that. I got an education endorsement and I taught for a number of years. And what I realized is that was already setting the foundation for what I do today without knowing it at that point in time, because I realized really quickly it didn't matter how great of a teacher I was if I didn't get the kids to buy in and love what I was doing. So you want to talk about one of the hardest audiences in the world? Go give a keynote or a presentation to middle school and high school students and get them not to check their phone and get them to buy into what you're selling and all of that good stuff. But then I started having children, left the classroom, and I have a belief of you stay curious and whatever lands in your lap, you should say yes to and figure it out even if you don't have all the answers. And so then I would spend a decade in direct marketing. And what was interesting about that decade is that was when I really started becoming a presentation scientist without realizing it. I was able to take my analytical mind and assign, like, oh my gosh, here's a variable. When somebody says the information this way, it gets the audience going more than when somebody else says it the exact same way. But the audience of 10,000 in this arena is not getting as vibed and as excited. And I started paying attention to all of that and put that into my training, put that into my speaking coaching, put that into all the things I was doing in direct marketing. And then we ended up, my unit I was leading was the top 2% of that organization. And then we were small, but producing tons. And I did that for a decade. And then I said, well, what's like, I know what it would take to go to the next level, Rob. And I was like, I don't have it in me. And so I had a director of HR sat down and she's like, Patty, you'd be an awesome corporate trainer. I'm like, okay, we'll go into corporate training. And I ended up in a role as a presenter manager, Rob. And the presenter manager role was my sweet spot. It was like everything had come together. And then I was with that organization for 15 years. But through that process, I saw presentations from the beginning to the end, from ideation. How does presentations become a strategy? And from those ideators, nope, guys, if you're going to put that into the curriculum, how are we going to sell it? How are we going to present on it? How are we going to talk about it? Then I did that with marketing all the way down to the end where we're doing professional learning and retention. And through that process, I would hold audition events. And in 2011, a girlfriend that was at that company that left that company called me. And that's how my business started because I picked up a phone call and I said, hello.
Wow.
And she said, Patty, I've got these electrical mechanical engineers. They are brilliant subject matter experts, but when they go to present at my conference, their brilliance gets diminished. And that's not great for them or for our conference. I know what you do. I've seen what you do. I need your help. And she basically wrote my business plan for me. I didn't even know what it was. I didn't know what I was really doing, but I said yes because I thought it sounded like amazing work. And now, fast forward all these years later, and I offer services beyond the conference speaking. Um, but I love to share all of that is because the blend comes together very uniquely for the groups that I like to connect with, which are people who want to be brilliant presenters, but what they're really most brilliant at is their subject matter expertise. But let's bring in these presentation skills to make them put those two together and be brilliant at whatever their professionalism is, but elevate that professionalism with the skills of presentations.
Right. Well, you got a lot on the table here. First of all, I have a book that we're going to write, and it's going to be called Because I Said Yes. Okay. That's the book. I can't tell you how many people have similar stories, including me, who actually
Mm-hmm.
picked up a phone as a 21-year-old insurance agent for New York Life in the back of a room because I was the closest to it. But it changed my life because the trainer couldn't get into the room. They were double parked and they said, Jollis, we don't care what you do, just get up and do something. And I had an acting background, so we had learned these scripts. And I won't go into too much detail. I'm just saying, I love your story and I love reminiscing as you were going through it of how many times because I said yes, it always advanced, even if it wasn't in the right direction necessarily. It taught me something to get into the right direction. So I wish that we could get into those schools a little bit more and tell people, particularly the new hires,
Mm-hmm.
that no move is a bad move. They're all there for a reason. They're a building block. You may not get the gold watch at that company that you just got hired by, but they're there for a reason. And
Mm-hmm.
I think because I said yes is our book, but we'll worry about that another time. I'm just telling you that really resonated with me. Uh,
Well,
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
glad it did because, that's even where I'm at today with my resultations method is I had to put it like I learned by fire.
yeah,
All of a sudden I'm supporting 200 speakers at a conference. How do I scale this?
yeah,
And what I realized is as I was supporting these subject matter experts, it was taking me almost 2 hours or 2 sessions or more to get the really good stuff out of them and then be able to turn that around into a really powerful presentation.
yeah.
And then that's when I started putting my analytical mind on. So that's why I said the math degree was so great because I said there's got to be a better formula. Like I
Right.
need an A squared plus B squared equals C squared that would mean that when I ask these questions in this order, then that's helping them get to clarity. Because that's what I was really passionate about was helping because I know what it feels like to have, and I'm sure many of your listeners feel it too sometimes. Like I have all this swirling around in my mind, but how do I get to clarity as quickly and as efficiently as possible? And
Yeah.
that's where my blueprint just organically came. And that's the first phase of a resultation approach is having clarity before you do anything else.
Yeah. All right, well, let's go there. Let's jump into this, what you're working on a little bit. You say that I'm looking over your materials and things, and we had a nice conversation before this a month or two ago, whenever it was, when we were sort of prepping and getting to know each other. You say that most people think they're presenting, but they're actually just informing. What's the gap, the fundamental gap between the two of those in your mind?
Well, the fundamental gap, I start right away when I'm working with somebody and I will say, "Tell me about your last presentation or your last moment in time." And they'll tell me what it is, and I'll be like, "Was it a success or not?" I'll start with that question.
Mhm.
And most of the time they'll go, "Yeah, I feel pretty good about it." And I'll be like, "Well, why do you feel pretty good about it?" Because what I'm trying to dig into is they have no quantifiable data or evidence that they can go back to that does support the fact that they've made the conclusion it was a good one or not.
Yeah, yeah,
And so that is one of the key pieces that I really start with people on is helping them make that mindset shift that you just gave information.
right.
Because if it's truly a presentation that is memorable and meaningful, then we have some sort of matrix that we can say, yes, we hit it. No, we didn't hit it. Or we can get some numbers. How many people scanned your QR code? How many people stayed around and talked to you after the presentation was done? There's all sorts of data we can collect. But if people aren't thinking ahead of time, what's the data that I need to collect to showcase that I hit my KPI or my CTA or whatever it is you're tracking in that moment? Then if you can do that, then you are informing.
Yeah. It's interesting. I don't know if you know this about me, but I trained all the Xerox trainers for about a decade, and we had a lot of them. And one of the things that I worked on was teaching them what an objective was, because it's a very misunderstood word in training. Everybody uses it differently, and it's sort of like a catch-all phrase, when in fact it's a really important phrase, because in my mind, an objective needs to be measurable, right?
Mhm.
And so when I would teach people, it was a 1 week class, and they had to, the final day they'd create this big presentation, and it had this objective. I would always tell them, when you're done, we're going to go out in the hallway, and I'm going to ask you if you met your objective, and you can tell me yes, I did, and I'm going to shake your hand, and you can tell me no, I didn't. I'm still going to shake your hand. And what I don't want you to do is look at me like a deer caught in the headlights going, I don't know. Because, at the end of the presentation, you're going to have a better appreciation for, numbers and figures. That's not an objective. It's not measurable. There's nothing to it. So I love where you're going on this, because I think that most instructors are missing that element, how to measure what they're doing. And again, we don't care if you didn't meet your measurement. We just want to see the measurement. Because if
Right.
you didn't meet it, we know what to work on. And if you did meet it, we know what else to work on. So, but it's just not taught. And I think it really impacts the success of a presentation, in my opinion.
Yeah, one of the things I love to say at to use your example, when you take them out in the hallway and you're shaking their hand and they say yes or no, either way, I'll say, well, how do you know that you know that you know?
Right.
And it always makes them kind of giggle a little bit because they have to like, what the heck did Patty just say? But the point is if you say yes to me, well, then how do you know that that was a yes?
Right.
What did you take away? What did you learn? In a training, because I actually work I call it the presentation spectrum, all the way from keynotes and comedians, where there's not a lot of cognitive load on the audience. And the idea is you're just getting asked back every time I'm in the audience had a good time, all the way over to training and facilitation on the other side, where there's a huge cognitive load
Right.
on the audience because that audience needs to change skills or whatever the case may be. But especially over here in that training and facilitation side, that's where it really becomes important. How do you know that you got it's not just that you said yes. I need to hear back how strong and solidified that yes may or may not be.
Yeah. Well, and again, when we set an objective, I'm going to tell you, I'm a big fan of Robert Mager, uh, who I don't think he's with us anymore, but he really
Mhm.
created some great old training books there. And when I say measurable, I could be teaching you how to drink out of a glass of water. But at the end of the presentation, I'm going to ask for 3 people to come up here and use at least 2 of the 3 skills that I just taught you. and with this percentage of efficiency. Now, I just laid out a measurable, clear objective. That's what I mean when they get done with the presentation. If everyone's drooling, okay, we didn't meet the objective. But like I said, now we know what to work on. Okay, we're going to have to slow that down. Maybe we'll be more visual. Let's make that a small group exercise. We've got a game plan. But I love where you're going, which is, getting an evaluation that has tens and we really like the trainer makes us feel good, but that's not a measurement for what we just tried to accomplish. And last thing, I'll turn it back over to you, so I don't want to filibuster. But
Yeah.
I also think that people, at least from what I've learned, they get mixed up between what I would call terminal and task objectives. So a terminal objective might be we're going to increase the efficiency by the end of 26 by X amount. Well, I can't check that tomorrow. So we're going to put a task in there. But for today, we're going to see if you at least understand and we'll measure it this way. So task and terminal. Do you have a version of that you work on, kind of separating the two?
Yeah, well, I kind of separate the two a little bit differently. So I separate the two more about, especially in the presentation moment, if you
Hmm.
will, when I'm actually executing the training or the internal meeting, or even from a sales perspective, in the sales world, because I work with a lot of sales teams. But where they have a tendency to get muddled up is, did they drive the conversation forward from a tactical perspective? Or did they just, again, give information and they were more concerned about how well they looked?
Right.
They were more focused on their performance, and their confidence, and that I said this and I did that, like just kind of like a little rubric or a checkbox, rather than looking at it from a tactical perspective that yes, you need to be a great presenter. Yes, you shouldn't say 10 times. I'm not diminishing any of that. That's valuable. But really, if you didn't move that training to the next, get your audience to the next level, if you didn't move that sales conversation to the next level, and to know that you hit that next level, like what's on the table right now at this moment. So that's the part where I've helped people pull those apart, is to say we need to evaluate and look at these differently. Do you want to be a stronger presenter or sales rep or whatever the case may be? Yeah, we can talk about those skills. But at the end of it, how are you tactically getting to where you need to go? Because if I have to, especially in a business scenario with a lot of my business clients that I work with, at the end of it, moving the conversation forward tactically is going to outweigh that you said five ums.
Yeah. Yeah. I tell you who I'm hoping is listening are managers, because the managers, a lot of times you and my audiences are typically sales teams too. So I know exactly where you're coming from here. All right.
Mhm.
And sometimes we actually do our job. We'll get the salespeople to begin to say, okay, I'm going to regrip the way I swing this golf club. I'm going to lose a little distance, but I see that if I really hone this swing, I'm going to eventually it's going to go far. We've got managers who frequently are sitting there with a tick box of some sort, going, you did one, you missed two, you did three, you shortened four. When in fact, what we really need to teach them is how to use what models we present strategically. Just defend the fact that I didn't ask a question there. I didn't use a trial close because my client told me that they were confirmed that they wanted to make a change. So I didn't ask them the question. See, if we can get this out of the straitjacket mode, frequently pushed by management, we'll not only put on great programs, but we'll be able to implement them as well. But I'm often sort of battling managers and needing them to get in the training room with their phones down, and around that not on the outside.
Yeah. Yeah. Because what happens is then one of my key shifts, because we talked about, I think we kicked this off, and what are the five shifts of a resultation mindset versus a presentation mindset? One of those shifts is get away from that rubric.
Mm,
That rubric center, like you were just saying, and what's that outcome focus? So for example, what must happen next in this moment in time? Because at the end of it, did they follow the slide deck that they're supposed to follow perfectly? Maybe, maybe not. But did they make adjustments that were strategic? Because then you answered that first question in shift number one, where I'm going to a defined outcome. is did I hit that outcome or not? And if I did, awesome.
Yeah.
Because the second shift I like to talk about too is so many times people are worried about, I call it performance. I'm really good at, I'm a good salesperson. I can get people to do certain things, or I'm just known for success. Um, but are they really also known for going into each situation and protecting what that outcome is? So let me give a little bit more specific example, Rob. So I was working with a sales team. They had a longer sales cycle than they realized. And so what was happening is when they needed to be building advocates to move up, because a lot of times they started at the more practitioner level of an organization, and then they had to go to the manager level. Then they had to go to the director level. Then they had to go to the VP level to eventually get their product purchased. Well, what they were missing was when the manager gave the introduction to the director, they were missing that the fact that what they needed to protect in that moment was building an advocate, not closing the deal.
Right.
And so that's one of the things that I like to train too, is to say it's also knowing what's the moment that you're in. And that, yes, we want to define those outcomes, but then we got to make sure we have the right outcome defined and we've protected that.
Yeah. I know. I hear you. And let's get into this resultation. Okay. So you got five elements of this framework. Is that what you said?
Well, there's three elements of when you go to execute it, but I like to talk about it in two ways. There's the mindset shift.
Okay.
So there's five steps of the mindset shift, but then when I
Okay.
actually go to create one, then that's a three-step process.
All right. Let's go mind step first. Okay.
Okay. So mindset, we talked about two of them. You got to
Hmm.
define the outcome, first of all. And then, of course, you got to make sure that that moment matches that outcome. So just do it's just like I like people to say, just double check. If you're saying, for example, if I go back to my example I just gave a moment ago, Rob, and if I say, oh, I got to go in and close the deal. Well, does that make sense when you're now being introduced from manager to director? Do you really closing the deal? Or are you going in to build that advocate? So we need to make sure those two things match.
Okay.
Then the third part is to make sure that when you are having this resultation mindset, is that you're shifting from info to I give some info and I'm doing a check in. Am I checking in as I'm going? What's my audience interaction activity that I have planned? What's my strategic open ended questions that I have that I want to plan? Because where am I getting those micro agreements along the way? So I can assure that I'm moving the needle towards that outcome that I'm trying to protect and attain at this presentation moment in time. Yeah.
Where do you think most presenters or trainers go wrong when they're trying to kind of walk this walk that you're describing?
I think they make too many assumptions and they don't ask enough questions. So, for example, they'll ask one question, they'll take that as the answer, and they'll keep going
Right.
rather than saying, oh, rather than doing a quick paraphrase and say, okay, I heard you say this. That's great. What else might there be? Even if it's as simple as that. Um, And or then they'll say something and say, okay, so you've shared that you have an issue with, this is breaking easily, or you want to get this more efficient. What else would be a value that you're trying to solve in your organization? I like to use this shovel analogy. Have you really dug in deep enough to verify that you're learning all you need to learn as you're taking your audience towards this eventual outcome that you want. Because what I see can happen a lot of times, and then that's where the evidence goes sideways at the end, is because they didn't truly know that audience and they took an audience to this outcome that they wanted, but they took them the wrong direction, and then they're wondering why they didn't hit it. Where they could have hit it, it's just that they didn't take the audience that right direction to get there.
Yeah. It speaks to, again, why we create objectives. I know I'm kind of hung
Mhm.
up on the objectives and I'm changing the words, but I'm kind of staying in my little camp. But what we forget is some people, when they don't know what the big picture is, they don't even know they're lost. And if we don't have a milepost of some sort, we have an audience that is feels like they've got it when they don't, and oh, lo and behold, they're having trouble implementing. In sales, Patty, we have trial closes. And a trial close to me doesn't mean I'm pulling out an application or signing you up for anything. It means I'm checking where you are in your decision cycle. Okay, you want to make a change, you don't know what the change looks like. You know what the change looks like, you don't know where you're going to get it from. You know where you're going to get. So these are logical to me. Where we're
Mhm.
at right now, it's really logical to me to try and create these. I think your questions, which you just threw out, kind of questioning the audience, will certainly help do that. Any other thoughts on that? Am I pushing you too hard here? Because
No,
usually when I
you're
ask
not
a
pushing,
question, I
you're
have
not,
the answer.
no.
I don't have the answer here. Okay.
I think at the end of it too is it's not that the goalpost changes. Like I'll use a football analogy. Like we're still going to the same end zone.
Right.
But if you think about the most the most recent Super Bowl, for example, if anybody is a sports person, it's like I've been sacked 15 times. Like, what am I going to do next? Like, I still got to get to the end zone. And so that's really that mind shift that I start talking about people is you need to have a good questioning strategy. It's not just presentation skills strategy, but
Right.
it's also how can I read my audience? How can I ask a very open-ended, engaging question to gain information from them to help me know how I may need to navigate a little bit in that moment to get closer to whatever that end zone is that I have. And so that's really that third shift that I'm talking about
Right.
is it's not just going back to what we talked about earlier, Rob, and saying, here's the rubric, go, 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 go. And oh, I did it. I said all 15 slides of my slide deck. It's that it's shifting the fact that I need to talk for a little bit and pause. I need to pause. I need to open it up. I needed it and how to still and it's a trick. It's not a quick and easy answer because sometimes people worry if I open it up to whoever I'm talking to, they're going to derail my time or they're going
Right.
to take me down somewhere I don't want to go. So there's certainly strategies that we can help with that. But that is definitely something that I really push when I'm working with my clients is starting to understand that it's not just talking and telling, you're kind of going in between talking and telling when you need to, but then you're coming back out and you're going into kind of this more conversational question mode that's still strategic.
Right. Right, right. I'm talking to the trainers and speakers here, right, keynoters here, because I love what you're saying. So I'm going to put some tactics behind it for a second. Uh, yeah, we got it. If we're going to depend on those questions, let's keep those questions open. Let's go even deeper. Let's create better questions, comparison questions, case study questions. Let's relay those questions, meaning we don't just be, we're not on a quota system. Just because I asked Patty a question and she said seven or whatever it is, doesn't mean we move on. Let's relay it. Let's work the whole room so we get a better understanding. But yeah, we won't go there now, but I think sometimes we push everything into that another dumpster called questions. And I got to tell you, if we just keep them open, which you threw out there, we've done the heavy lifting. Let's just get more creative while we're keeping those questions open, and I think we'll get more of a understanding of how this audience is doing.
Yeah, and what I have found, just to go off of that a little bit, 100% agree with you, Rob, but I love to teach people. I think there is something really powerful. And when you've given that open-ended question and they've come back to you, that you learn the skill of quick, powerful paraphrasing. Don't say, oh, so what I heard you just say is blah, 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 blah. But instead, to make a nice little bridge into real quick 3 or 4 words of what they said, but then whatever you end with, you're going right into that next question or you're going right back into that next bit of information, but you're connecting it as which is again part of the strategies that I work with people on is your ability to take your audience and interact with them. And as you move from a good to excellent to elite in your presentation moments, it's because you can do that so fluidly that your audience doesn't even know that you went between presenting to asking questions to facilitating. And all while you're seamlessly guiding this in this moment and heading and landing in the end zone at the end. And it doesn't look the same from one moment to another because the audiences changes, the answers to the questions change, and all of that. But that's the skill that you're really building when I'm working with people through this resultations mindset and then framework when they go to actually create their presentation.
Yeah. By the way, just as a guy who owns a couple of trademarks, how you doing on that trademark? Is it in the search mode? Where are you on getting that
Nope. It
circle R?
acts well, it's not official. It's this close to done. And I know it's this close to done because if you've ever done trademarks before, Rob, all of a sudden the spammers start sending you all this
Right.
mail
Oh
that's
yeah.
like, you gotta pay me this money and you gotta pay
Yeah, you
me.
got
So
to do it in Europe now. You got to do it in Tanzania. Yeah, I've got them. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So my lawyer I reached out to my lawyer. He's like, you're just about there. So, I
Right.
mean, it's really days away that it's truly trademarked. At this point, I could probably even say that it is. Um, but the other steps of the resultation mindset we've already talked about. Like, it's not about applause, it's about evidence. I mean, do we want applause? Yes, but we really want to see that evidence. And it's evidence. And then the fifth one is that it's that you don't create something that's one offs. It's also something that's a system that you include within yourself, that you do it over and over and over repeatedly. And that ideally that's penetrated into your internal teams, or it's even penetrated across your organization. That just like any strategy within a business, if it's going to have the most impact, it's going to happen not just in one silo of the organization. It's going to have more, it's going to go out farther than that. So that's the fifth part that I talk to people about, is how can this become a systemic change, that presentation moments become a needle mover in your organization or for your solo business or for you as a speaker, a public speaker, that you're really thinking about it in a business strategy way.
Yeah. Yeah, you had me at measure. You really did. I didn't mean that. It's an old corny phrase which I've probably said one too many times, but it was drilled into me at Xerox over 30 years ago. Listen, when you have a process, you have a way of measuring what you're doing, and when you can measure it, you can fix it. And that was our really simplified mantra as Xeroids. And so when I left, and I write like you, and I present like you. That has always sort of been the backbone of what I do. I'm of no use to you if whatever we're doing here is not measurable in some way. Because at the end of the day, if you want to last in the business as a professional speaker, trainer, coach, you better be able to implement what it is you're teaching. And so I know we're circling back now, but to me, the the reason why you can stay with clients, I have clients that have been with me for 15 years, uh,
Mhm.
because they have measurable results. If they just had me and my humor and my smile and my good looks, hey, we would, I'd have been gone long ago. So, but that's how important the topic that you've got here is. And so I'm glad you put some teeth behind it.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, thank you. Because
yeah,
I have the same thing, like 90 to 95% of my business is repeat and retention.
right.
I have some clients I've had for almost 15 years.
Yep.
And I love to say, if you don't measure it, you can't protect it. And if you don't even, I say so many times I work with people and they don't even realize they're in a very key presentation moment, and that moment floats them by. And they either realize it later and totally regret it, or unfortunately, if they completely missed it, there's an opportunity that they'll never be able to capture again.
Right.
And so part of this is just saying, guys, pause. Whoever I'm working with, whoever I'm coaching, pause. Is this a presentation moment? Is this networking event you're getting ready to go in? Do you have your pitch ready to go? Or are you going in and winging it? Or we wouldn't wing a keynote by any means, but still, the idea behind that is, if have you really thought about what those results are, and that what that needle is that you're moving? Because even, I mean, Rob, even when I work with people who have had fairly successful public speaking careers, which you may be able to relate to this well too, is even when I say, what's your measurable system, they don't have it in place.
Yeah. I doubt you'll talk to somebody who's been in the business for too long who answers that question. I don't have one. I think it's really one of the keys to success, which is what allows us to pivot, which is allows us to
Mhm.
evolve and move. Or we would just keep doing it the same way. I mean, if there was no feedback, I'd probably still be working with an overhead projector. You know, I was very
Yeah.
good with those things, by the way. I really, really, I knew which side to stand on and how to keep my paper from blowing off from that fan in the front. But I digress for those who don't remember the overhead. Last question. If we had somebody going out, and I typically finish with this one because I always love to hear what the answer might be here. If somebody were going out tomorrow, they just listened to you, they picked up some great ideas, but they can't put them all together. They just, if we gave them just one thought for tomorrow, you're going out, and I mean in terms of measurable results. Let's stay in our era, in our lane.
Yep.
What would you whisper in their ear? What should we tell them?
I would whisper in their ear before you go into that presentation moment, answer three questions. What do you want your audience to do? What do you want them to most remember? And how do you want them to feel? Because if you can answer those three questions, you know what you're measuring.
Yeah. Look at that. I paused and she was done. That's it. She's not adding anything onto it. She has closed, ladies and gentlemen. How do people get a hold of you?
Well, I would love everyone to first of all connect with me in LinkedIn. So if
Yeah.
you just look Patti Schutte, Be Brilliant Presentation Group, connect with me on LinkedIn, and then go to my website. On my website, there's a course that you can do. It's a free micro course. And then you can also connect with me. So there's a Let's Chat button, and it takes you right to my calendar. And Rob, I'd love to have conversations with people who like the idea of, what does a resultation mindset look like? What could this potentially look like? And when you schedule a Let's Chat, you literally get Patti. You don't go to a sales team or something like that. So those are the best ways to get in touch.
Perfect. Okay. And for those of you who aren't shooty experts, it's SCHUTTE. I have that right?
You have that right. And it is all spelled out. Be Brilliant
Right.
presentationgroup.com.
Okay. Good. All right. So we know how to get a hold of you. Well, I knew a month or two ago when we talked, this was going to be a good one. Because listen, we can talk about storytelling on this show and we can talk about humor, and Lord knows I'll talk to you about delivery skills. But I really think one of the secret sauce elements that we're missing is being able to get some sort of feedback and measurement to what we're doing, because we got to keep improving. We have to keep the line, that finish line doesn't stop. And we got to keep driving forward. This is a great idea, a great way to do it. I hope people reach out to you who are looking for that type of assistance. And I appreciate you coming on the show. It's been just terrific.
Thank you, Rob. Really appreciate the opportunity.
You bet. Well, we'll do it again as well as we can next time, everybody. Until then, stay safe.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please follow, rate, and review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen. For more resources and to connect with Rob, visit thepresentationwhisperer.com.